Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is January 24th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. About 55% of the total electricity consumption is covered by 8 nuclear power plant units operating in the government-controlled territory. This was reported by the press service of SE Energoatom, according to Ukrenergo. On January 24, 2022, 8 power units of Ukrainian nuclear power plants located on the government-controlled territory are operating at maximum nominal capacity, covering nearly 55% of the country's total electricity consumption. The largest volumes of electricity are generated by the South Ukrainian NPP, the statement reads. At the same time, one of the units is still undergoing scheduled maintenance, carried out once every 4 years to ensure nuclear and radiation safety. Read also, electricity generation up in Ukraine, while deficit remains significant. Ukrenergo. It is noted that Zaporizhzhia NPP, which is temporarily captured by the Russians, continues to constantly consume electricity from the Ukrainian power system to cover its own needs. All 6 power units of the ZNPP have been stopped, while invaders are blocking their reactivation. As reported, at the beginning of February, one of the power units of SE Energoatom will be put into operation following repairs. General Colonel Mikhail Teplinsky's dismissal is yet another sign of continued divisions within Russia's senior command, as General Valery Gerasimov is trying to impose his personal authority on the ongoing campaign in Ukraine. That's according to the British Defence Ministry, citing the intelligence update, Ukrenergo reports. Teplinsky's dismissal is likely another symptom of continued divisions within the senior hierarchy of Russia's operation as General Valery Gerasimov attempts to impose his personal authority on the campaign, the report says. Teplinsky was the officer on the ground in charge of Russia's relatively successful withdrawal from west of the Dnipro in November 2022, and he has received praise in Russia as a capable and pragmatic commander, according to British intelligence. Read also, intelligence reveals changes in Russian tactics expected after Surovikin replaced by Gerasimov. It remains unclear whether Teplinsky still retains his additional remit as head of the VDV, Russia's airborne forces. There is a realistic possibility that debate over the tasks VDV has been given has contributed to his dismissal. VDV has often been employed in ground-holding roles traditionally given to the mechanized infantry, the report reads. Earlier, the British Defence Ministry reported that the newly appointed commander of the Joint Group of Russian Forces in Ukraine, Valery Gerasimov, and Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu are seen as more and more detached from reality due to the decision to deal with routine discipline issues in the army against the background of real problems mounting. Metropolitan Epiphany of Kiev and all Ukraine, primate of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, is on his first official visit to Rome. As reported by Ukrenergo, this is stated by the OCU press service. As part of the delegation of the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, the head of the OCU will take part in a meeting with Pope Francis and a number of heads of institutions of the Roman Catholic Church responsible for inter-Christian and inter-religious dialogue, interaction with Ukraine, and media. The Metropolitan is accompanied on his trip by Archbishop Yevstrady of Chernihiv, deputy head of the External Church Relations Department and member of the OCU Secretariat. Read also, heads of OCU, UGCC agree to set up working group to reform church calendar. In addition to meetings in the Vatican, the delegation will attend at a prayer for Christian unity, which will be performed by Pope Francis in the Basilica of the Apostle Paul on the occasion of the corresponding week, which is celebrated by Christian churches. Also scheduled is a meeting with Ukraine's ambassador to the Holy See, Andriy Yurash, and a visit to the spiritual center of the UGCC in Rome, the St. Sophia Cathedral. As reported by Ukrenergo, a group of children from Ukraine, spending their holidays in the Diocese of Teggiano Policastro in the south of Italy, attended a general audience with Pope Francis. Berlin has already received Warsaw's request for consent to the transfer of Leopard 2 main battle tanks to Ukraine. Polish Minister of National Defense Mariusz Blaszczak reported the news via Twitter, Ukrenergo saw. The Germans have already received our request for consent to the transfer of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, the Polish minister wrote. He also asked the German side to join the coalition of nations that will support Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks. This is our common cause, because it is about the security of the whole of Europe, stressed Blaszczak. Read also, Pistorius, no news yet on Leopard tanks for Ukraine, decision to be made soon. As Ukrinform reported earlier, the spokesman for the German government, Stefan Hebestreit, said Germany continues to look into the possibility of transferring main battle tanks to Ukraine, but is forced to take into account public moods. Poland has declared its readiness to transfer a company of Leopard 2 tanks, 14 units, to Ukraine, while needing the consent of Germany as the producing country. Finland and Great Britain are also ready to hand Ukraine their tanks. The Security Service of Ukraine apprehended an agent of the Russian Security Service who was helping the enemy prepare a missile attack on energy infrastructure in Kropyvnytskyi. The SBU Security Service reported this on Telegram, Ukrinform saw. According to the probe, the traitor turned out to be a local resident who was recruited by the Russian Special Services after the full-scale invasion. He came into the aggressor's field of view because of his pro-Kremlin views, which he repeatedly made public among his friends, the SBU notes. According to the intelligence service, the accomplice of the aggressor power gathered information about the deployment sites of Ukrainian army units and critical infrastructure facilities across the region. He was also focused on the locations of energy facilities. Read also, court hands down first verdict for organizing sham referenda in southern Ukraine acting on enemy instructions. He was supposed to install a GPS tracker near one of the transformer substations in Kropyvnytskyi. Guided by the tracker signal, the occupiers sought to adjust their missile strike on the facility. In the event of a successful strike, the invaders planned to continue a series of attacks on the regional center, using the FSB agents' tips, the SBU wrote. It is noted that in order to gather intelligence for the FSB, the enemy asset visited the area and carried out photo and video recording of facilities, having transmitted his report to the enemy through anonymous messengers. SBU operatives detained the culprit as he intended to install a GPS device near the electric substation. During the inspection of the scene and search in the detainee's home, law enforcers found a GPS tracker with a SIM card, as well as phones and computer equipment with evidence of correspondence with his FSB handler. The court ruled to remand the perpetrator in custody. Electricity generation has increased in Ukraine, but the capacity deficit is still significant. That's according to the country's state-run power grid operator Ukrenergo, as seen by Ukrinform. Electricity consumption is at the level of Monday. Electricity generation increased slightly. The capacity deficit remains significant, the statement reads. It is noted that consumption caps for the whole day have been established for all regional distribution companies. Each regional energy company in its respective region shall draw up schedules of planned hourly outages, which must ensure that consumption is within the approved cap. Exceeding the limits leads to risks of emergency situations in the power system. Therefore, emergency shutdowns are applied to prevent them. Read also, President's Office, parts for energy equipment to restore power grid could be manufactured in Ukraine. Ukrenergo recalled that the power shortage is a consequence of Russian missile and drone attacks, which damaged power plants and the high-voltage network. The latest attack on January 14 caused significant damage to several power units of thermal power plants. Electricity generation at operating power plants is unable to fully cover consumption. In addition, thanks to the fact that Ukrenergo restored the 330 kV line, the reliability of the power output of one of the power plants in the southeast of the country increased. As reported, Ukraine's energy system has already survived 12 enemy missile attacks and 14 UAV strikes. In addition, more than 10 gigawatts of the main installed capacities are currently inaccessible to the Ukrainian energy system and under the enemy control. This is the Zaporizhzhia NPP, largest in Ukraine and Europe. Zaporizhzhia TPP, Luhansk TPP, Volhyrsk TPP, and Kakhovska HPP. In addition, the majority of wind and solar power plants are located in the temporarily occupied territories of the south. On January 24, at 1300 hours, a presentation and discussion of the topic why tax reform is necessary, what will it offer, will be held. Organizer, Media Center Ukraine, Ukrenergo. Speaker, Rostislav Shurma, Deputy Head of the Office of the President's Office. Why is this interesting? The Office of the President, together with the Ministry of Economy and lawmakers, is working on a tax reform project that will radically reduce the rates of most taxes and increase responsibility for their non-payment. New amendments to the tax code are currently being drafted. The speaker will talk about the experience of countries in which similar reforms have already yielded results, and explain how the reform will affect the population, entrepreneurs, and state. This is an offline event, Hall 1. Watch on Ukrenergo's YouTube channel. A permanent monitoring mission of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, has started its work at the Khmelnytskyi nuclear power plant in Ukraine. That's according to the press service of the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine, Ukrenergo reports. On January 23, 2023, the permanent mission of the IAEA began its work at the Khmelnytskyi NPP. Last week, the same missions of the International Atomic Energy Agency were launched at the operating South Ukrainian and Rivne NPPs, as well as at the Kornabil NPP, which is currently at the stage of decommissioning, the statement says. It is noted that after the official ceremony of raising the IAEA flag over the industrial site of KHNPP, a working meeting was held at the plant with the participation of IAEA officials, acting chairman of the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate Ola Korokov, and CEO of the Khmelnytskyi NPP Andriy Kozyura. Read also, Zelensky meets with IAEA Director General. During the meeting, the parties expressed a common position that the main task of the mission is to maintain nuclear and radiation safety at Ukrainian nuclear facilities in the conditions of the war unleashed by Russia. As reported, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, expanding the IAEA presence in Ukraine will prevent nuclear accidents at nuclear power plants. At the Zaporizhzhia NPP, which is under the occupation of the Russian invaders, IAEA specialists have been working on a permanent basis since September 2022. Photo, snriu.gov.ua. Some 14,578 children are believed to have been deported from Ukraine to Russia since the full-scale invasion. That's according to the press service of the Ombudsman's Office, Ukrenergo reports. In addition, according to the data of the Children of War government-run child search portal, as of January 24, 2023, a total of 343 children are considered missing, while 9,206 have been found. Read also, Russians injure 914 children in Ukraine as reported, according to information provided by juvenile prosecutors. 459 children were killed and more than 914 injured across Ukraine as a result of Russian aggression. Alexei Simonenko was dismissed from the post of Deputy Prosecutor General. That's according to the PGO press service, Ukrenergo reports. Prosecutor General Andriy Kostin signed an order on Simonenko's dismissal at his own request from the administrative position of Deputy Prosecutor General. Read also, Ukrainian court seizes 2 planes, worth €10 million, owned by Russian company. As reported by Ukrainian media, Simonenko went on vacation to Spain at the end of 2022, amid martial law enforced in the country. Simonenko has been in the position of Deputy Prosecutor General since March 27, 2020. Photo, PGO of Ukraine. Today we were talking about those news. NPPs cover 55% of Ukraine's power consumption. Energoatom. Teplinsky's dismissal sign of divisions among Russian military command. British intel. Ukrainian church leader on visit to Rome. Germany receives Poland's request for Leopard tanks transfer to Ukraine. Blaszczak. FSB asset preparing Russian missile attack on energy facilities in Kropyvnytskyi detained. Electricity generation up in Ukraine, while deficit remains significant. Ukrenergo. Discussion of tax reform project, what it will bring. IAEA's permanent monitoring mission launches work at Khmelnytskyi NPP. Russian war in Ukraine, 14,578 children deported. Ukraine's Prosecutor General sacks deputy.